What's up, everybody? It's Tomberry Disciple. I'm back again. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. Today I have some cool ass news. Today I really wanted to explain and go in depth with the story of the first Final Fantasy video game. I just feel like with the game coming out in 1987 for the Nintendo that they really didn't have the technology back then to really get all the finer points across in the detail that really help you get the main picture of this story. Though a lot of the key points in the story are given to you at the beginning and end of the game, a lot of the points in the middle throughout the gameplay, you really can't absorb as much of the story as you should or could. So today I hope I can do the justice in this and actually tell you the full explained story of Final Fantasy 1. So grab the popcorn, everybody. This is going to be a good story to listen to. Here we go, Tomberry Disciple explaining it to you real style. Starting off with the whole story explanation, I figured it would be good to go ahead and have this little gameplay cinematic that was on the PlayStation 1 and PSP remake of the video game. It was just a little thing that Square wanted to give the players to have a nice little visual effect of the game. Something to really note beforehand that the game should tell you but doesn't. It's kind of a twist I suppose they wanted to put on the game, but it's not much of a twist, it's just kind of confusing. This game's story actually starts 2,000 years before the game actually starts itself. So think of your present time in the video game now, and then go 2,000 years before that. And in that 2,000 years, you have this guy who appears to be another character to add to the confusion, a man named Garland. And this creature here is known as Chaos, or we assume so anyway. This character here would be the Warrior of Law, who is basically bound by time and a big paradoxical loophole that holds him bound to completely fight Chaos again and again, deeming him to lose. Now that already sounds pretty damn confusing, so let me go into a lot of a further explanation, if you will. And let me tell you a little thing about these crystals here. These crystals are the biggest part of the story and the basic objective throughout the whole game. So let's go into a little bit further detail of everything now. Okay, so you might already be a little confused, wondering what in the world is this guy talking about? 2,000 years in the past, the beginning of the game hasn't even started yet. Let me really dig down deep into it. To the left here, the man crouched with his left arm going to his right shoulder, wearing the dark armor, you have Garland. Garland, you see here, is a man with a very devious plan that not many people even know of. One thing Garland actually has planned is that he has these 4 elemental fiends of the land at his helm or grasp. He has the ability to basically use these guys at his will, to his will, whenever he wants to. And so within saying that, he has a plan thought up in his head to send these 4 beasts into the future, so while they're there, they can basically have 200 years to themselves to destroy the realm, basically rule however they want to before his 200-year reuniting becomes apparent to everyone else. Another thing that he has in store is for them to actually send him back in time to make sure that this exact thing, goddammit, happens again. So basically, he has this infinite time loop created where he sends them to the future, they send him to the past. After he's in the past, from being in the future, absorbing all the strength, he gets to become our man here to the right of us here, where you have on the bottom, which was the GBA and or Game Boy Advance, and also Nintendo view of Chaos, or the one above it to the right, the PSP image of Chaos, who we assume was the giant dragon in the cinematic view right before the actual game starts. Now that we've got those things underway and laid out before us, let's get a good view of the story while the fiends have been on this realm or Earth for 200 years now. Again, while the fiends had the world for 200 years, it wasn't just small, simple things that they were destroying. Understand that they were decimating the land. They weren't just your average fiends. Basically, these guys were like titans. They were 4 elemental creatures that destroyed water. They destroyed all life on land. They made volcanoes rage. They made winds go crazy like tornadoes, and they also made the air completely stop in some places. Basically, just destroying this land completely. There wasn't a whole lot that anybody could really do about this, because their land was basically being held together by 4 crystals of light, which were basically the elemental crystals that held all of this land together. And to save those crystals, they needed the 4 heroes of light, who were basically told by destiny to come and basically defeat the fiends in Garland and restore the crystals to grace. It's something that we hear 1,000 times over within the game. A couple other things to note before the game actually starts itself is you have the man Garland again, who has just freshly started his plan, putting it into gear. He has went off and stole the Princess Sarah from this land here of Cornelia. Now, though he doesn't have a whole lot to do with Sarah, he's really after a item that she holds, the lute. Now, a lot goes on and on and on throughout the game. You meet a whole lot of people throughout the story, but when the actual gameplay starts, this is the point of the game where the story basically loses itself, because you're playing as the Warriors of Light, making your journey through the land, basically to again save the crystals from grace and restore their power to the land. Doing all this, and to set these gears in motion along the way over and over again, you have to meet a whole lot of people and run a whole lot of errands for these people, from pirates to basically sages, elves, a whole lot of people, even dwarves, doing small things for them. Then eventually you go off to find an airship and all kinds of other things without a whole lot of explanations behind those. Even throughout this thing, I can't give you a bigger explanation on those, because the game itself didn't give us a whole lot. At the beginning of the game, you basically already have been told that the events have already been set in motion with Garland, as he has already stolen the Princess Sarah from Cornelia. He has the intention of using Sarah to get the loot, which really, by turn, he has Sarah grab the loot so you can defeat Garland, so he can be sent back in time by the fiends, and you can get the loot to open up the doorway to the fiends, so you can actually set all of the things that he had in motion and planned into turn to get the gears turning for Garland's plan to set in motion. That sounds like a crazy mouthful, I know, but basically that is the gist of it. A more simplified version of that is just that Garland has set you up by stealing the princess forcing you to go to the Temple of the Fiends to face him so you can obtain the loot from Sarah after you save her to basically make your way towards the end of the game, to open up the Temple of the Fiends to send yourself back in time so Garland can defeat you and set the world into peril. This is really big and basically one of the biggest parts of the story, along with key little factors in between. And another thing that you can really look at is that Garland is basically a genius here. You basically just, from hearing all this already, know that this guy has thought through almost every single aspect of this plan. Almost. Now, you may be wondering about Garland, his story, what made him possess this, basically what possessed him to want to do all this. Well, Garland just has this sore ability to lose and this great need for more power. Thus, him teaming up with the Titans. And the Titans really play a big role into this story as well, basically being the source of most of Garland's power. And Garland's power is, well, let alone what's bringing on chaos upon the land, hence his name after his transformation. At this point, you've probably been wondering, just who are these creatures? Who are these four fiends of darkness that this guy keeps talking about? Well, that's just who these characters are here in front of us. On the top left, you have Lich, the bringer of life and death, and that is not just saying that, that is also his ability. Below him, you have Kraken, who is the basic water demon, you could say, who has the ability to raise and lower the tide amongst the land. Above Tiamat here, to the right of us here, is Merilith, or I've also heard Carrie on a lot of other discussions and talks and other versions of walkthroughs and videos, who is a serpent creature who has been taking over the surrounding volcanic areas and making those areas go haywire or afoot. And last but not least, on the bottom right here, we have Tiamat, who has been messing with the raging winds of the land. Now, these creatures are also responsible for, again, sending Garland into the past so that he can send these guys into the future for their 200 years of reign. Also, these guys are the main focus and the cause of the change of our character Garland here, who turns from Garland into chaos at the end of the game. A lot of change goes through there, and yeah, that's kind of a big jump, and you're probably wondering what happens between there. So far, this guy has only been talking about the beginning of the game and the end of the game, and you would think that this is just like one giant big spoiler that I've dealt for you, and in some form so far it kind of is. But keep in mind that this game was made in '87, and with me telling you that a second ago that there was a lot of go here, do this, do that type of quest, that's really what the game turns into. So the story really starts getting watered down at this point. Basically, all I've done has I've cleaned off the slate of all the confusion. I've laid down before you the main story, and now I'm going to elaborate a little bit further to get to the main key points of the story that leads us up to the end of Garland going from the man here to the left to the creature here to the right. To really dig deep into the story, you really have to start here, and the game itself should have actually started here with the 12 sages, or the 12 sages of Lucan, who basically foretold the prophecy of the video game, or the story, or the legend of the game before the events actually take place. Basically, these are the guys who steer you in the direction to make sure that the Warriors of Light defeat chaos and restore the crystals to grace. Now, jumping ahead here and way ahead, you have the end of the game going on here. So you can watch that as I describe a little bit more, and if you don't want to hear this part, feel free to mute me away. Basically, this scene right here is everything I've told you what it is leading up to. Sorry, I can't ever fucking talk. Now, between the middle of the story, this is exactly what happens after you get the princess and save her from Garland at the beginning of the game. You obtain the loot from her, and then you are put off on another journey to travel further out to the neighboring town, where you soon have a run-in with pirates, where the run-in with pirates ends with a captain being very afraid of you and your team and basically begs you to not kill them, and you obtain his or her ship. I can't remember if it was a he or a she. All I remember was Bach or BK. Now, with this ship, it is basically the vessel to bringing you to, I want to say, a good 70% of the destinations in the game, where later on you go through more perilous journeys to later obtain an airship, which is a little bit further on into this explanation. With the ship, you travel further south and you go to, I believe the place was called Elfenheim, where you have to save an elfin prince. And in order to do so, you have to defeat Astos, the Dark Elf King, which you do in turn face and defeat Astos, getting a crystal eye, which a crystal eye belongs to a witch, which the witch gives you a tonic potion, which you can give an elf prince, which in turn sets you on another journey after you awaken this elf prince in Elfheim to go off and defeat your first fiend, the Lich. And from there, it's very similar quests doing very similar things, which later on starts laying farther into the story after a brief discovery of what seems to be aliens and robots. You find out that there was a race of people who figured out what was going to happen 2,000 years prior to the events of the game, who basically had all the defensive motion set up to try to prevent chaos from happening. Well, they fail, and chaos turned them all into bats. And you find this out again later on at the end of the game, a very brief moment. Not much is explained further into that. You just find out that your characters are the true warriors of light that were destined to take down Chaos or Garland all along. Now, from here on out in the story, there's not much else to fill you in with except for the end of the game. And with this boss fight here, you can see that Garland, it was no easy cookie to destroy or chow down on. It took a lot of great feat for the Warriors of Light to go through. Now, one thing that Garland or Chaos did not think of or even have in mind, that the Warriors of Light would one day succeed and they would destroy his time paradox. He had no actual backup plan for this, henceforth inevitably causing himself to lose by not having a backup plan, thinking he did with the fiends and that being his only backup plan. He honestly figured that this would be, again, inevitable end to all. He would have all power, playing in on his sore loserness. But he did actually lose this time around. And when that happens, the four Heroes of Light actually, sadly, go completely unnoticed. The time paradox that he created actually sends him to the past so that he would have 2,000 years to rule freely before again the Titans or Fiends show up, so he can again take their power to become even stronger being of the land. Basically, he wants to destroy all this and rule the universe, not just the earth. Henceforth, the whole image you see them fighting and the land being crushed. Here you have the game basically filling you in on what happens with the time paradox. The sad part is, with them being in the past, nobody even finds out that they were the true bringers of the lot, because the lot was never truly stolen anymore. You can basically tell that these were true heroes because they get no thanks, they get no praise. There's not even many real stories told behind them other than stories of legend. So this is one of the reasons why I felt compelled to myself to go ahead and do a further explanation of this story, though I couldn't give you too much more than the game already did. Hopefully I painted a nice picture here telling you what exactly happens within the game from beginning to end, in a little bit more in-depth version of what the game tried to do. Again, the game came out in 1987, so it was really hard for them to get those key points out. This video might be, I'm not real sure how long it's going to be towards the end of the thing, maybe about between 15 and 30 minutes. This game could take you anywhere from 10 to 12 hours to be, if not longer, if you go through some optional side quests. Within saying that, those 10 to 12 hours, 1 hour of that is actual story plot getting told to you. So that's about, anywhere from, let's say you're a completionist, this could be 13 hours of the game that you're playing without any story given to you whatsoever. So that's what really made me felt compelled to go in and do a little further in-depth version of this story, because it was a lot better game than 2, and it really deserved that justice. And another thing about this is, I know a lot of people didn't actually know the story itself. So this was just a good breakdown of that. Again, you could watch this video and mute me and watch the cutscenes if you would really like to do that. That is another good way to kind of just draw in the story, because the beginning and the end cutscenes is where most of the story is at. So the real sad part about all of this, sorry for that small brief silence, there's just not a whole lot more to say, is the fact that even after the Warriors of Lot did everything that they went to do all of this, like it says here, none will ever recall. The struggle the four endured for the breaking of the chain means that it never existed. Basically saying that everything that they had done not only ended the chain, but ended the cycle of the chain. But within the tale of fantasy that all people tell, the memory of their deeds lives on. And another sad part is that within this story, that it would have been a fact on this realm that they lived in, but it just became a legend to tell to children. Tales of dwarves and elves, of dragons and shining civilizations that reached for the heavens as they fell. And again, another sad thing about these warriors going through the hell that they did is just no one will remember. And now their return is upon us, with the memory of their struggle buried deep in their hearts. They will quietly watch over our world. Another theory behind the four warriors of Lot, that these are not characters of this world, that they are entities sent down to stop the chaos of the land. So there's another theory. Remember always that the forces of the world must be used as they were intended, that the power of Lot must never be used for dark, and that the true crystal resides in your heart. And this was a message from Square, basically talking to the gamer at the time, saying that you can even prevail darkness. You don't have to be a hero, for you are the warrior who crossed time. Basically amping you up for the thing that you just did, completing the Final Fantasy I video game. Being the crystal bearers, the heroes of Lot, the bringers of Lot, the destructors of chaos. You are the bringer of light. A great ending to the game, to a great explanation. This was Tonberry Disciple, everybody. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to watch the playthrough full on here on the Tonberry Disciple channel. I hope this was very informative. I hope that you liked most of this, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. Just to wrap this up before it's all over, I would really like to get more of these full explanations in at the end of every one of the Final Fantasy games to further go into detail of the stories that don't really get explained, or maybe get explained but they do it in a very confusing manner. Square is really good about that. When it comes to making video games, they have the ability and they are really good at creating compelling stories, but they have the craziest way of getting those stories across. It can be watered down, it could be hard to follow. So hopefully me doing these at the end of every one of the games, it could really shed some light on those story aspects. And sorry for the delay on this one, for those who have saw Final Fantasy 1 walk through all the way through. Again, you can always watch me here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. I will get more videos out to you as I can. Now let's jump off here, everybody, and play some Final Fantasy. This is Tonberry Disciple. Thanks for watching. Tonberry Disciple out.